The fifth episode of Adults delivers a perfect blend of existential dread, awkward social interactions, and quarter-life crises as the roommates confront both death and their fear of growing up. When their shared therapist George suddenly passes away, Anton and Issa spiral into guilt-fueled panic, convinced their excessive neediness drove him to suicide. Meanwhile, Billy navigates an uncomfortable art gallery date with her new boyfriend, Mr. Teacher, while Paul and Samir inexplicably find themselves hanging out with high schoolers, highlighting the group's collective struggle with adulthood. The episode begins with Anton bursting into the apartment to announce their therapist's death, initially triggering a comedy of errors as his roommates misinterpret his 3-alarm text alert. Bringing someone home is 4 alarms, Anton clarifies as his friends frantically prepare for what they assume will be his hookup, complete with rose petals and swan-folded towels. When he reveals that George is dead, the shock sets in immediately, with Issa dramatically activating a vibrator as she declares, "I'm crying hard and fast." This opening perfectly establishes the tone of the episode, finding humor in genuinely distressing situations while showcasing the group's codependence and theatrical responses to life's challenges. At George's funeral, we witness Anton and Issa's growing paranoia as they piece together a narrative that they somehow caused their therapist's death. "What if we committed thericide?" Issa asks, coining a term for when your personality makes your therapist kill themselves. Their self-centered interpretation of the tragedy becomes increasingly absurd as they recall their excessive therapy demands, including Issa's 3 a.m. calls asking if she was needy, and Anton questioning whether his 10-year-old self would be disappointed in the man he'd become. The funeral scene brilliantly captures the duo's inability to process grief normally, as they whisper frantically while interrupting the service. When they overhear someone mention respecting the family's privacy, they leap to the conclusion that this must be code for suicide. In an attempt to find closure, Issa arranges for a medium named Taryn, described as having great skin and the ability to commune with the dead, to conduct a seance in their apartment. Taryn, hilariously dressed as Austin Powers, creates an atmosphere of New Age mysticism that Anton immediately dismisses. The seance provides some of the episode's funniest moments, as the planchette moves to spell what should be George, but ends up as Gerororge, prompting Issa to earnestly suggest this might be his heaven name, because you get a new name when you cross over. When the spirit confirms their worst fears, that they were responsible for George's death, both Issa and Anton collapse into theatrical displays of guilt and sorrow. Parallel to this spiritual intervention, Billy explores a more grounded kind of adult anxiety as she attends an art gallery with her new boyfriend, who is clearly older and more established than her friend group. The age and lifestyle gap becomes painfully apparent as Billy attempts to fit in with his sophisticated friends through increasingly inappropriate jokes. Her cringe-inducing comment about a Georgia O'Keeffe-style painting, "You nailed the pink of my clit," stands as one of the episode's most memorable moments of social awkwardness. What makes this storyline particularly effective is how it captures the performance aspect of early adulthood. Billy is trying to present herself as worldly and confident, while lacking the social experience to read the room properly. Meanwhile, Paul and Samir engage in perhaps the most regressive behavior of the episode by hanging out with teenagers after delivering alcohol to their house. Initially drawn in by the nostalgia of playing Super Smash Bros., referred to as Melee, the pair seem delighted to revisit a simpler time in their lives. "Remember when the plan for Saturday was like just park?" Paul reminisces, highlighting how adult responsibilities have complicated what used to be effortless socializing. Their storyline takes an uncomfortable turn when they realize the boys are hosting girls who are freshmen in high school, forcing them to confront the inappropriateness of their presence and confiscate the alcohol they provided. This sequence perfectly captures the confusion of early adulthood, being legally able to purchase alcohol but not quite mature enough to handle the responsibility properly. The episode reaches its climax when Anton and Issa attend George's funeral reception and dramatically announce to the gathering that they believe they caused George's suicide. "Anton and I are the reason that George shot himself in the face," Issa declares with misplaced confidence, before quickly correcting herself. "Sorry. Took his life." Sorry. Their public confession is immediately deflated when George's widow clarifies that he actually slipped in the shower. He didn't commit suicide at all. This revelation both relieves and embarrasses them, highlighting how self-centered their grief has been. As George's widow points out, "You thought you were responsible for his death? That is so narcissistic." In the final scenes, all storylines converge as the roommates return home and process their various social disasters. Billy returns from her catastrophic art gallery date with her boyfriend, who reassures her that his friends thought you were great, despite her awkward behavior. Paul and Samir arrive drunk after their uncomfortable teenage hangout, with Samir vomiting while Paul declares his love for him in a stereotypical drunk bro manner. The episode concludes with Anton, Asa, and Billy at George's grave, where they say goodbye and express uncertainty about their future without his guidance. In a surprising supernatural twist, they seemingly receive responses when asking questions into the void. "Am I like a bad person?" Asa asks, receiving a clear no in response. This leads to more pragmatic questions like whether Asa should ask for a raise, yes, and if Billy will die alone, no. While the show leaves it ambiguous whether this is truly George's spirit or just the wind, the moment provides emotional closure for the group. The fact that they seek validation from their deceased therapist, even from beyond the grave, speaks volumes about their generation's reliance on external validation and professional mental health support. What makes this episode particularly effective is how it balances absurdist comedy with genuine emotional undercurrents. The roommates' excessive behaviors, from attempting to contact the dead to hanging out with teenagers, can all be traced back to their fear of fully embracing adulthood. George's death forces them to confront not just mortality, but also self-sufficiency. Without their therapist to process life's challenges, they must learn to navigate difficult emotions on their own, a prospect that clearly terrifies them. The episode also cleverly contrasts different approaches to adulthood. Billy attempts to accelerate her maturity by dating an older man and entering his sophisticated social circle, only to discover she's not quite ready for that world. Paul and Samir regress to adolescent behavior, trying to recapture the simplicity of their teenage years through video games and immature social interactions. Anton and Asa avoid responsibility entirely, blaming themselves for something they didn't do because it's easier than accepting the random, uncontrollable nature of death. Each character's storyline highlights a different maladaptive strategy for coping with the uncertainty of early adulthood. By the episode's conclusion, there's a sense that while none of the characters have fully resolved their issues, they've at least gained some perspective. The revelation that George died accidentally rather than by suicide forces Anton and Asa to recognize the limits of their influence on others. Billy's embarrassing art gallery experience helps her see that forcing herself into spaces she's not comfortable in isn't the path to maturity. And Paul and Samir's uncomfortable encounter with actual teenagers provides a necessary reality check about their own age and responsibilities. The final scene at the grave offers a moment of genuine emotion amid the comedy. When the friends appear to receive answers from beyond, it suggests that perhaps they already know what they need to do. They just needed permission to believe in themselves. The question, "Am I a bad person?" underscores what may be their deepest fear, not that they're failing at adulthood, but that there's something fundamentally wrong with them that prevents them from succeeding. The reassuring "no" they receive, whether supernatural or self-generated, provides the comfort they need to continue their messy journey toward maturity. Adults continues to excel at capturing the particular challenges of millennials and Gen Z navigating a world where traditional markers of adulthood seem increasingly unattainable or undesirable. Through exaggerated situations and sharply written dialogue, the show demonstrates how its characters use humor, regression, and magical thinking to cope with the uncomfortable realities of growing up. As they stand at George's grave asking questions of a potentially non-existent spirit, they embody their generation's quest for guidance in an increasingly uncertain world.